Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dr. Kate Christian from the Psychology Department. Good to see so many of you here today. Thanks for joining us. I would like to welcome you to the second talk of the school year for our Department of Psychology Speaker Series here at Grand Rapids Community College. Today's presenter is Jen Rapanos, a licensed mental health therapist and the owner of Wellbeing, a place created by Jen in 2014 to support children and adolescents through the lens of somatic psychotherapy, yoga, and mindfulness practices. Jen earned her master's degree in social work from Wayne State University in 2001, and since then she has helped countless young people work through trauma and manage their anxiety. And I personally am very honored to have Jen here with us today. So please welcome Jen Rapanos.
Thanks, Kate. Can you all hear me okay? I first want to thank Grand Rapids Community College and the Psychology Department for this invitation to be here today. As Kate mentioned, my role currently is a child and adolescent therapist here in Grand Rapids. I work primarily with children and adolescents, and over the course of the last almost 25 years, have been working as a social worker with kids and teens, primarily supporting them with anxiety, kids who experience anxiety, and kids who have experienced trauma. So I think what I'd love to do to start is to give you a little bit of context as to how I landed here talking about this. And I'm going to start with this great picture of me when I was 11 years old. As I was actually preparing for this talk, this memory came up of me in 5th grade. So this is me in 5th grade. And it was the first time I had to do an oral report. Does anybody remember like that first time they had to get up and talk in front of people? I am going to ask questions and ask for interaction. Thanks, yeah. And for me, I was a kid with anxiety, lots of anxiety. And what I recall most about this experience wasn't the actual presentation. It was actually the night before. I remember sitting on my bunk bed in my room, yellow wallpaper with flowers, and having an absolute fit. Crying, probably screaming a little bit, completely overwhelmed, begging my mom not to send me to school the next day. Can anybody kind of understand? I see some heads nodding, right? When I look back at that experience, I know now, because of the work that I do, that as a kid, I was outside of my window of tolerance. We'll talk a little bit in here in a while about what that means. But I was outside of my window of tolerance with just the idea of standing in front of a group of people talking. My body was flooded with cortisol and adrenaline, and I was overwhelmed. But I showed up. I don't remember anything about that oral report. But to be honest, that is kind of how I managed anxiety through childhood, through adolescence, into my adulthood. I developed this pattern of feeling big feelings, feeling overwhelmed, feeling out of control. And in that, developing this belief that something was wrong with me. I had no clue what was going on, and nobody really had answers for me at the time. So developing this belief that something was wrong with me, and then developing this real disconnect from my body. If you've ever experienced anxiety consistently, give me a nod of the head. You know it doesn't feel so good. I see tons of heads nodding. So the physiology, that body part of it, was so overwhelming for me that I'd really just kind of disconnected from my body because it didn't feel good. During my adolescence, I numbed it, right? And sometimes used substances to make it feel better. And that would work temporarily, right? As an adult, I bypassed it by just using my will, just showing up, just doing the work. Because by that time, I was also a mental health therapist, right? Some of the work that I've been doing as of late has really helped me understand myself better now. And this language that Dr. Arielle Schwartz put together helped me understand my experience through my childhood, adolescence, and early adulthood. She said, When we temporarily manage distress without fully resolving the underlying physiology or physiological imbalance, symptoms tend to reemerge rather than fully resolve themselves. So I was kind of on the outside, looked like I was kind of getting by, doing okay, but things weren't resolving on the inside. So overriding symptoms in a way that mimics being inside of the window of tolerance, which we'll talk about in a little while, and ultimately using techniques based in self-restraint or excessive willpower can backfire. So into my adulthood, this was me. This is how I was kind of functioning. It wasn't until 15 years ago, about 15 years ago, I was working as a school social worker in a center-based program. And the center-based program, excuse me for a second here, supported kids with really big behaviors. This was a program in the educational world, we called it an SEI program. Don't love the terms that we used in education to identify kids in special education, but that was a program for severely emotionally impaired kids, which really meant most of these kids had pretty significant trauma. Pretty high ACEs scores, if you've heard about the ACEs test. And so most of these kids were dysregulated most of the day. I was also dysregulated most of the day. From the outside looking in, I was the professional, right? So I would come in and I had the strategies. I knew cognitively, conceptually, strategies to help, right? But I was a mess inside. I was outside of my window of tolerance most days. I would come home exhausted. And it was about this time, 15 years ago, I did get permission from my daughter to share this picture. This is her when she was about 12 years old. So 15 years ago, she's now 27. My daughter, too, was struggling with anxiety. So if you know anything about anxiety, you know there's that genetic component, right? And we had started to talk with a therapist. And during one of the very first sessions, the therapist was very insightful, knew my background, and asked if I had heard of mindfulness-based stress reduction. Has anybody here heard of mindfulness? Yeah. So I was like, yeah, I have. In fact, like when I was 19, I read Jon Kabat-Zinn's book, Wherever You Go, There You Are. I was really into like Thich Nhat Hanh. I had like read a lot of books about it, right? The problem is it was all conceptually based. I had no practice of it, and you'll see me do this a lot. I had no embodied practice of mindfulness. So while it sounded like a really great way to live and be, I didn't know how to put it into practice. But this is when things started to change, because I started to recognize as I took my first mindfulness-based stress reduction course, an 8-week course, and I started to dive into yoga and really get into my body, I started to realize that as much as I was trying to support my daughter conceptually with like strategies and ideas and talking, my nervous system was so dysregulated that it impacted her nervous system. And that's when things started to shift and change for me in terms of like my own well-being and how I started to understand the work that I was doing with kids and adolescents. And it really has shifted and changed my approach in working with kids today. So that's my intention, is to talk with you a little bit about that work. And we'll have time at the end for questions and answers. I'm going to ask you to start with me. I'm going to read this quote first. When we begin to know ourselves in an open and self-supportive way, we take the first step to encourage our children to know themselves. This is from Dr. Dan Siegel. And I love this quote because it's this invitation to start understanding ourselves. And if your intention is to work with children one day, if you have children right now, that this invitation to start knowing yourself in a really curious and open and supportive and loving way really shifts and changes then your relationship with the kids that you interact with, perhaps your own children, and it really encourages them to be able to know and understand themselves because you're attuned and more aware from a more regulated state. I'm going to ask you to do a little practice with me, and by the way, that's kind of the way I work. I don't get up and talk in front of people a whole lot. I do a lot of group work and individual work, and so there's a lot of interaction. So I'm going to ask you to do a little practice with me. I'm going to explain it a little bit first, the why, and then the invitation is to join along with me. So we all have this neuroception, meaning information coming in all the time that's registering within our nervous system through our senses, through our environment, through people, and it's detecting nonstop in our waking hours cues of safety or cues of threat, constantly. And this is unconscious. So for me, getting up in front of a group of people, even though I cognitively can say, I'm safe, I'm good, I'm still having a bit of a response in my body, right? You didn't know that I went into the bathroom and did some breathing exercises before I came out here. But one of the ways that we can work with our neuroception and help us feel a bit more centered and grounded is by orienting to spaces. So I'm going to invite you to do this simple little practice of orienting to space. And then I'm going to invite you to do one more practice with me, and it's more for me than you. So what I'm going to invite you to do is first just make sure both of your feet are on the ground. And your posture can be however you want it to be. And the invitation is just to let your body land here and your mind. Okay? So see if you can just sense and feel your feet on the ground. You don't have to look at your feet, you're just sensing and feeling your feet touching the ground. Just sense and feel the chair underneath you, maybe behind you. Just notice your posture. And then begin to open your awareness just to this room. So really look up. Have you ever really seen the tiles on the ceiling? Take in just with your sense of sight this space. And for safety reasons, I'm going to keep my eyes open, but you can start to begin to look behind you and just check out what's behind you. And if you happen to make eye contact with somebody, perhaps give a smile or a nod of acknowledgement, just start to check out the space behind you, looking over one shoulder and then the other shoulder. Noticing the exit signs, noticing where you need to go if you needed to leave. And then just bring yourself right back to center. Feel your body in this space again, and just let that go. So some of the teens that I work with who have pretty significant anxiety, they do an orienting practice every time they go into a new class. Otherwise, they're all caught up in their mind. So they sit down in class, they sit down, feel their feet on the ground, feel their butt in the chair. They turn around, notice who's behind them. Can you kind of think or understand why looking behind you might help you feel a little more safe? Have you ever had somebody come up behind you and you're not sure who it is and you're like, you have to look to see? So just cueing in on your own and just noticing who's behind me, what's behind me, where's my exit signs can help settle your nervous system a little bit. One more practice I want to do with you is just safe space. So this is a place that I go to every year. It's up in the Keweenaw Peninsula, up in the Upper Peninsula. And it's a space that when I think about it, it feels really good. So I'm going to invite you to either close your eyes or just take your gaze down for a moment and see if you can bring to mind a space that feels really safe, really good for you. It can be a real space that you visit often. It could be a space you'd like to go to one day, an imagined space. Imagine what you can see in this space, so really take in the elements with your eyes. If there's sound in this space often, think about what sounds you hear. If there's smell, just take that in. And if this space feels good, feels safe, notice how that resonates in your body. How does that feel? Just notice. Then as you're ready, go ahead and just open your eyes or bring your gaze back up. Thank you for practicing that with me. When I work with kids, especially kids who are experiencing heightened anxiety, I start with the brain. And there's a few reasons why I start with the brain. When we teach kids key parts of the brain as it relates to anxiety, it helps them understand the why their body is responding the way it is, why their heart is beating so fast, why their stomach feels so uncomfortable and like it has butterflies in it, right? It gives them some understanding to what is happening and why. and they understand to this shared humanity in it. When I was 10 years old or 11 years old, I thought it was just me. I thought something was wrong with me. Little did I know that lots of people experience anxiety, and that it was actually a really normal response to feel like I was going to throw up and to feel like my heart was beating out of my chest. But I didn't know that. So when we teach kids about the brain, they start to understand, we were actually designed to stay safe. So there's parts of our brain that help us stay safe. And we're going to talk about those parts in a minute. And if you're an adult, either a therapist or a parent or a counselor, somebody working with a child, it gives the same language to what they're experiencing. So this can be really powerful for parents once they understand this information to have this dialogue with their kids. If you'll do me a favor, we're going to create this little handy model of the brain with your hand really quick. So just lift up one of your hands. It doesn't matter which one. Appreciate you playing along here. This is going to be the hand model of the brain. You're going to take your thumb and place it on the inside of your palm here. And then these 4 fingers, you're just going to wrap them over the thumb. So this is now your brain. Your brain is bigger than this, and it has 2 hemispheres, right? But this is through the kind of context of teaching kids and adolescents, right? So here on the front is your prefrontal cortex, right here. Everybody touch their forehead, right behind the forehead. And if we pop open those 4 fingers, right here's the amygdala. We're going to start with talking about the amygdala first, okay? So you can go ahead and take your hand down. Just so you understand that the brain develops from the bottom, the brainstem, up, inside out, okay? So this amygdala part of the brain is developed, upon birth, and it is considered our emotional brain. Its job is to protect us, okay? It keeps us safe from perceived threats. So our ancestors, long ago, this part of our brain was a game changer. It allowed us to actually evolve as human beings, right? We were constantly scanning, as we already know, our environment for danger. And if there was perceived danger, which long ago there was probably environmental danger out there, a saber-toothed tiger, right? We were designed to respond really quickly. It was not stop, think through what my options are. It was fast. And we respond with one of 3 ways, either by fleeing, fighting off, or freezing. The thing about this part of the brain is it's not our thinking part of our brain. This part of our brain is the emotional part of the brain. And its job is to keep us safe and react really fast. Its job is not to realize or to consider if it's a real threat or a perceived threat. So if you're a kid who has test anxiety, and the moment the test goes down in front of you, is it a real threat? Is there physical danger? There's not. But the brain is perceiving it as a threat, and the brain responds in the same way, fight, flight, or freeze, right? If you get a text, in a group text, and you're a teenager, and somebody's called you out on something, right? Are you in physical danger? Probably not. But psychologically, holy cow, right? What's this going to do to my social circle? You're going to have the same physiological response as if it was an actual perceived threat, or an actual physical threat. When kids experience anxiety, the amygdala is highly activated, right? It's kind of sometimes working on overload. It's perceiving a lot of things in the environment as a threat. The prefrontal cortex, so that front part of the brain right here, which doesn't develop until your mid-20s, this is what I call the thinking brain. This is our executive functioning. This is the part of the brain that helps us see the bigger picture. It helps us problem solve. It helps us attune to how other people might be thinking and feeling. It helps us regulate our emotions, right? When we're feeling stress or overwhelm or dealing with a problem, this is the part of the brain we want online working for us. Unfortunately, oftentimes we call it flipping the lid, or with kids, I call it the wise owl. The wise owl flies off, and the watchdog, or the amygdala, the emotional part of your brain, is in control. Have you ever done something, said something out of like a lot of emotion, and then later you really regret what you did or said? Anybody? I see some hands raising up. So when that happens, what was in charge? Your amygdala, not your prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex is what comes back into play later when you're like, oh man, why did I do that, right? It's the thinking part of the brain. So to kind of sum this up, when we give a context for understanding the brain and how it's designed to keep us safe and why we have such big responses, reactions, it helps put context for kids to what's happening. So Bessel van der Kolk, who is one of the leading researchers in trauma, says that the neuroscience research shows that the only way we can change the way we feel is by becoming aware of our inner experience and learning to befriend what is going on inside of ourselves. So when we have some context to why, it kind of shifts okay, maybe I can start to pay attention to what's happening here. It's not just me. Nothing's wrong with me. Actually, this is how we were designed. Now my amygdala might be kind of on hyper alert, right? Overreacting, but I understand now why that's happening. So the breath. When we think about anxiety and we think about the nervous system, we know that the breath is the fastest way to regulate the autonomic nervous system. Has anybody here heard, or anybody been told, I should say, just take a deep breath? Yeah. Most of the time when I ask kids, like, what works for you? Kids will say, it doesn't work to take a deep breath, right? And there's a reason why. Oftentimes, kids are just told that. It's a top-down approach. It's a strategy. I can't tell you how many behavior plans I wrote years ago that said, take a deep breath, right? The problem is we never taught the kids anything about it, right? So it was a top-down approach. It was an idea. And if you ever watch a kid take a deep breath, when you say, okay, show me a deep breath, it usually looks like this. I'm going to put my hand here and here. It's like, it goes about this deep, right? So there's no awareness of what an actual deep breath even looks like and what feels like, or why it actually works. So when we teach them about the brain, we teach them why their heart starts beating so fast, why their breathing increases. They start to understand, oh yeah, there's this physiological response happening when I'm stressed or anxious. Now I understand why my breathing and changing my breathing might help, right? So it's really important to teach kids how to breathe. And we do that in many different ways. With younger kids, we use lots of props, pinwheels, feathers, right? So that it becomes fun. In various positions, often, most of us, when we're sitting, are sitting with what I call a C curve. So we're not sitting in a way that actually supports us. If you're sitting like this all day long, your breath can only get so deep, right? And so we know that when we're stressed, when we're feeling anxious, our sympathetic nervous system is working, right? That's our fight, flight, stress response system. And if our breathing is such, short, shallow, it's working with our sympathetic nervous system. So just the way we're sitting and breathing can impact where you're at already with your nervous system. So we teach kids how to sit up tall. Oftentimes I have kids lie down. Sometimes I bring parents in and have them put their hands over their heart and back to feel the breath, what it feels like to do chest breathing, versus on the belly and lower back, what it feels like to do belly breathing, and how that feels a little bit different. The other key here is that we provide frequent, consistent opportunities for kids to practice in calm states. Going back to, has anybody told you to calm down? When your lid has flipped, and you're feeling overwhelmed with an emotion, and somebody says, just take a deep breath, that's not the time to start practicing. Practicing is really key here. I think I mentioned I went in the bathroom and was doing a little bit of deep breathing before I came out here, right? I do breathing techniques all the time. One, because I'm working with kids practicing, but two, because I still have anxiety. And so I use these breathing techniques all the time. Your breath is an internal resource. And I love that, just thinking about that, shifting from this something's wrong to me, or something's wrong with me, something's wrong with my body, to I actually have this internal resource that I can lean into and lean on. And once kids start breathing and feeling the effects of breathing and deepening their breath, it's actually self-reinforcing. So that's the bottom-up approach. That's actually feeling it and embodying it and noticing, there's a shift in me right now. Something feels different. I actually feel a little settled. I feel calm, right? That's much different than somebody telling you to do it and just thinking it through. Make sense? You want to practice with me a little bit? Okay. So we're going to do a couple of breath practices. I think what we'll do is the sigh breath. Now, it's going to feel weird because you're sitting next to neighbors, some people who you might know and some people who you don't. But we actually, about every 5 minutes, do a short, kind of quick inhale, couple inhales, and sigh out. This is just automatic, right? It's like a resetting of our nervous system. People will say it in that terms. But we can actually do it consciously. And when you think about anxiety, the high energy of anxiety, release feels actually pretty good. So in this breathing technique, I'm going to talk you through it first, and then we'll practice it together. It's a full breath in through your nose, okay? A long, slow breath in through the nose. Then you try to take one little sip of air more in, and then you open your mouth and you sigh long out. So it looks like this, and then we'll do it together. Was anybody in the bathroom when I was doing that earlier? You were? Yeah. So full breath in through the nose, last sip of air in, and then sigh out. We're going to do it 3 times together. So I invite you to sit up tall first so that you can get a long, nice breath in. Take a breath in through the nose. Sip in. Let it go. Ooh, that sounds good. Let's do it again. Breathing in. One more time. Pause and just notice, how does that feel? Hear someone say better. The goal isn't necessarily to feel good. In fact, sometimes this will make people feel a little lightheaded. Sometimes it will make people feel a little on edge, right? This work, this embodied work with the nervous system is just paying attention to it, noticing, how does this fit with me today? How did this feel today, right? Raise your hand if it felt kind of good, just to kind of release a little bit. Yeah. You think about, in our culture, we're kind of taught that you don't make noise. So even if we sneeze, we're like, right? Our bodies were designed to like release and let it out, right? So we want to like release and make noise. It's actually a very normal thing. Sighing is a great way just to kind of reset and work with the breath. I'm going to teach you Take 5. If you know any kids love this one. And this is like a balanced breathing. So it's balancing your inhale with the exhale and trying to make both the inhale and exhale long and slow. By the way, when we exhale long and slow, we're working with that parasympathetic nervous system, and we'll go into that in a moment here. But that's the rest digest. That's what's going to make you feel a little more settled and present. So it's simple. You just take your hand up like this, and in a moment we're going to trace our hand. We use a pointer finger of the other hand, and we trace up one side of the hand, breathing in. We stop and pause at the tip. We consciously exhale long and slow down the other side of that same finger. And then we continue on, okay? So if you're ready, go ahead, take a breath in. Pause, exhale, slow out. Breathing in. Pause, breathing out. Breathing in. Pause, out. In. Out. Breathing in. And out. Just pause for a moment. Check in with how that felt. Okay. So the breath, before we watch this little video, the breath is an internal resource that we all have access to, right? I encourage you and invite you to get really familiar with, really kind of curious about your breath, how you're breathing, pausing, checking in any moment, extending your breath. It's like our first thing that we should go to when we're starting to feel anxiety. Practicing in calm states, really important. Go ahead and watch this video.
I get really mad when my brother hits me a lot. I don't like it when you say you don't want to play with me. When I'm mad, my brain can get a headache and it can start hurting. Your blood keeps pumping because you're like really mad. And you start to get sweaty because you're getting really, really mad. And then when you start getting really mad, you turn red. When your body can't really control yourself, mad just takes over your body. I just get out of control. It's kind of like if you had a jar and then the jar would be your brain and then you put glitter in the jar and that would be how you would feel like. If you shook up the jar and the glitter went everywhere, that would be how your mind looks. And it's like spinning around and then you don't have any time to think. And you sometimes punch stuff and people when you don't really mean it. When I get angry, I feel it in my heart. I really don't like when I get angry. The amygdala really reacts, but the prefrontal cortex tries to keep it down. When I feel like I want to, get really angry and yell, I just sometimes, take deep breaths. First you find a place where you can be alone, then you find some way to relax and calm down. When I need to calm down, I take deep breaths. I breathe in through my nose. Sometimes I close my eyes or just take deep breaths. It's coming down, it's not moving. It's slowing down and then it stops. And the heart pumps slow and then it goes into your brain. It's like all the sparkles are at the bottom of your brain. My brain slows down and then I feel more calm and then I'm ready to speak to that person.
Did anybody know about their amygdala or prefrontal cortex when they were 6 years old? A couple of you? Yeah. That's what's really, really inspired me to start to do this work with kids. This is a lot of stuff I wish I had known when I was younger, right? As an adolescent, as a young mom, in my early adulthood too. I'll mention too, after just watching this video again, that anxiety often looks like anger in kids, right? Those big baffling behaviors. The core or at the root of that is often anxiety, comes out and looks like anger. Who here has heard of mindfulness? Kind of like this buzzword, right? So again, I think I'd mentioned that I remember reading about mindfulness, probably listened to a number of podcasts. I don't know if we had podcasts back then, but did a lot of just conceptual understanding of what mindfulness is. The problem was I wasn't actually embodying it. I wasn't actually putting it in practice. But I love this quote by Jon Kabat-Zinn. Mindfulness is a way of befriending ourselves and our experiences. Because when you start working with yourself and understanding what's going on the inside, sometimes it doesn't feel so good. And so one of the big pieces of mindfulness is the way in which we do it. Just paying attention is one thing, but doing it with a lot of curiosity versus judgment is a different thing, right? And especially if you're a parent who reflects back and thinks, wow, I was really dysregulated for like the first 15 years of your life, right? When we start to do some of that work and kind of understanding ourselves a little bit more, doing it with a lot of compassion is really important. So mindfulness is awareness that emerges from paying attention on purpose. So when we pay attention on purpose, we learn things, right? With kids, I don't start with paying attention to all those uncomfortable feelings. That doesn't usually work well. We start with paying attention with our senses. So we do things like mindful eating, mindful listening, going outside on a walk and just noticing things. When we practice mindfulness in that way, it's actually working with our prefrontal cortex. It requires focus. That's an executive functioning skill. So those moments, sometimes when I was working with kids who were so overwhelmed and we could just get them to something else, focused on something else, that strategy worked because we were engaging that prefrontal cortex. But if that's the only strategy we always have, distraction. And I know a lot of kids who just use distraction, either video games or substances, right? Numbing. If that's the only strategy in our pocket, we're never going to heal, we're never going to get better, right? So it requires paying attention, right? Bringing awareness to what's happening. We start on the outside. So with mindfulness, I always teach kids this mindful check-in practice that we're going to do here in a moment. And this skill of pausing just to check in with what's going on the inside, just with a lot of curiosity. What's my breath like? What are any sensations in my body? What's my mind like right now? It helps build what we call interoceptive awareness. So interoceptive awareness is basically being aware of what's going on internally. If we don't have that skill, do you think we're very good at regulating ourselves? No. So this is a skill that's required in order for us to regulate, right? So I'm going to teach you this practice of a mindful check-in. And you're invited to play along. You're invited to check out whatever you feel most comfortable with. But I'm going to invite you to just come into a comfortable posture again, but an alert posture this time. So sitting up tall, if that feels good to you, both feet on the ground. And I invite you to close your eyes, or simply, if that doesn't feel good to you, take your gaze down so you're not distracted by things around you. There's nothing you have to watch right now. I'll keep my eyes open just to kind of keep my eyes on the doors. And begin by just feeling your body in this space. So again, the feet on the floor. Sometimes we have to wiggle our toes to grab our attention. Then allow the feet to be on the floor. Notice if your feet are shaking or moving. Nothing wrong with that. Just notice it. How interesting. Notice the feeling of the chair underneath you or behind you. Check in with your breath. Just notice, without changing it all, where you feel your breath the most right now. Is it up near the chest? Even place a hand there, or down by the belly. Feel free to place a hand there. Just notice where you feel your breath. Notice what it would feel like if you intentionally extended your breath a bit. So breathing in a bit deeper, a bit longer. Letting the breath go. Just notice how that feels. Does that shift or change anything for you? Notice the mind right now. Is it distracted thinking about other things? Is it saying, no way am I doing this? That's all okay. Just paying attention to what's happening in this moment. Last step here, if you could put a word or two to describe how you're feeling, a feeling word. In your own mind, just label how you're feeling right now. Just notice how you're feeling right now. Notice how that feeling shows up in your body. When you're ready, really gently, your eyes are closed, start to blink them open and close. Bring your gaze back up and come back to this space, just orienting back to the room. Yeah. Could you see how doing this practice every day, maybe even a few times a day, might give you a little bit of awareness of what's going on internally with your emotions, how you feel, how you think even, right? Yeah. We're not really taught this. In fact, our society is full of distraction, right? So this takes effort, this takes practice, but it can start really simple, really small. We're going to watch another short clip here in a moment. And the intention of this is I want you to pay attention to how this video lands in your body. So we're going to shift here in a moment and start talking about felt sense in the body. And this is a skill that's really hard for most of us, especially if we've kind of disconnected from our body. And our society spends a lot of attention, puts really high up on a pedestal our cognitive, like thinking, right? What we have, our knowledge, our wisdom, what we think about things, we talk through problems, right? We hold that up pretty high. But we have a lot of wisdom and knowledge in our bodies that we often just ignore, right? But when we can start to pay attention to that, it gives us a lot of data, a lot of information. And so we're going to watch this little video. Again, my invitation is to notice what happens in your body. Okay? You might notice that your face smiles. You might notice some things in this area too. If you're laughing or reacting to what you're seeing, notice anything happening in the body. We'll talk about it in a minute. Check in with the body. Notice anything that's changing in the body. Tension, pulling up. Anybody notice anything happening in their body? Feel comfortable sharing? Yeah. It was turned. Yeah, you noticed that. How about in your body? Did you notice anything in your body happening? You were laughing, okay? So some energy just kind of releasing. Anybody notice anything else? Anybody's mouth water? Okay, mouth watering? Yeah, what'd you know?
My chest feels a little bit lighter.
Your chest feels lighter. Yeah, so we're just watching that. Yeah, I love it.
You brace yourself a little bit. Their reaction.
I loved it. He braced himself a little bit, right? Yeah. Anybody else notice anything? I saw another hand. Yeah.
The tingling in my jaw.
Yep. What'd you notice? He started craving kiwi. Yeah, right? Like that looks good, right? And there's probably some felt sense that comes along with it. I noticed just from my diaphragm, it kind of pulls up a little bit like, ooh, kind of that bracing. Yeah. So this was just a cute kid like eating a kiwi, right? We had a physiological response in our body watching him because of this cool mirror neuron system in our brain, right? But what if that kid was having a temper tantrum? Overwhelmed. How do you think that would land in your body? A little different? Yeah. It probably would land a lot different. And so I'm coming back to that idea that I started with at the beginning, that our nervous system has a big impact on other people's nervous systems. I was really dysregulated for a long time. And I was very unaware of it. If I'm not aware of it, I can't change it. Once we start to pay attention to how things land in our body, we can do something with it. Does that make sense? If I'm just dysregulated, but it looks like I'm doing great, and I've got these strategies, and things are going well, right? That's one thing, but I'm missing a huge intervention that has to do with my nervous system. We're going to talk about that at the end a little bit, co-regulation. But I wanted to do this exercise as we start to think about the felt sense of an emotion. This is a picture that a kiddo drew after we had been doing some work together, paying attention to his anxiety. And he was able to eventually draw what it feels like in his body. Does it look like a small energy? And if you can have anxiety and it can look kind of small, right? I could be standing up here and having anxiety and you wouldn't know. But it's like screaming inside sometimes, right? It's a big energy. In fact, it wants you to flee. Often that's the safety mechanism, is to get the heck out of here. And we know that with anxiety, avoidance is usually the thing that we do, right? Because it gives us short-term gain, makes us feel better in the moment. Long-term, not so well, right? So now you want me to pay attention to the yucky feelings, right? We start small. But you can see that there's a lot of energy going from his arms. He screams a lot when he's anxious, so it looks like anger. His head feels like it's just all over the place. Can you think about what part of his brain's probably in control right now, right? His heart's beating really fast. It feels like, it always says it feels like it's like pumping out of his chest, and it feels it a lot in his throat. Feels it a lot in his throat. So one of the techniques I use with kids is body mapping. And this is something anybody could do. It's this taking the skill of mindfulness and noticing what you're feeling in the body, right? So body mapping looks like you perhaps saying to somebody or to a child, what do you notice in your body? What's going on right now? Can you place a hand over where you're feeling something, right? So really cueing into what's going on in the body. Oftentimes we bypass that completely and just go to talking and strategizing. We just bypass all the information and knowledge that the body's giving us. When we can have kids turn that lens inward, it helps them understand and make that link and that connection between the sensations and what's going on in my brain. Oh, that's right. My amygdala is in charge. Right? Again, paying attention to sensations builds that interoceptive awareness, and that's a skill that's necessary for self-regulation. And then I love to teach, especially teens, this research and work by Dr. Jill Bolte Taylor. It's called the 90-second rule. And so her research shows that when we have an emotional response, like let's say somebody said something that makes me feel angry, right? The hormones that are released through my body take about 90 seconds to kind of make their way through their blood flow and then leave. Has anybody here been angry longer than 90 seconds? Yeah, for sure, right? What happens is we perpetuate it with our thinking. So if I'm not aware of all the things that I know about the body, right, and I'm not aware of how my thoughts are impacting me at all, or what my thoughts or the nature of my thoughts are, I can perpetuate emotions pretty easily, right? Now this is different. We've talked about this. This is different than like grief, right? Or trauma, especially kids who've experienced a lot of trauma, right? But just this understanding of the hormones that are released, it teaches kids to be able to ride the wave. Have you ever actually sat down and felt an emotion and sat with it? It can be intense, but what we notice is about 90 seconds, it kind of comes down a little bit. If I can just stay with the sensation, it's helpful just to even name it. Okay? So body mapping, it's a really good tool, even for adults. Sit down, draw a little stick person. Where am I feeling it? Feeling it here, feeling here, feeling here, feeling here. Okay? We also explore the sensations. We name it. What color? What color is it? Give me the color. It can be anything. Gosh, anxiety, red, green, throw up color, right? Lots of different colors. What's the texture like? Really getting descriptive of how that anxiety feels. For me, it feels like throbbing in the body. It's really hot, right? What is the size of it? Is it big? Is it small? Does it vary? The energy, we already determined, anxiety is usually a pretty big energy. Is there a smell to it? Sometimes kids love to think about a smell. Is there a feeling or a sensation to it in terms of shaking, trembling? I love to have kids scale it. On a scale of 1 to 10, how big is it? Often when we experience anxiety, we think it's happening all the time and it's always a 10 because it feels big and overwhelming. When in reality, it probably varies. So really being able to distinguish, like, what is it at right now? Once we start paying attention to it, we start to feel and see the variance in it. So putting a number to it. And then naming it. Dr. Dan Siegel talks about this easy term to remember, name it to tame it. When we can actually name what we feel, it's using the left hemisphere of the brain, can down-regulate the amygdala. It doesn't make you all peaceful and calm, but it can start the process of starting to calm down. And if you're a parent or an adult working with a kid, validating what they're feeling is huge. Seems like you're really anxious right now, putting words to it. And when kids can name how they feel, it's self-validating. How often do you sit down and talk to yourself about, this is what I'm feeling? Pretty powerful, actually, right? When you start practicing it. And especially when you look at the whole realm of different emotions and feelings. Instead of I'm mad, actually maybe I'm embarrassed, maybe I'm disappointed, maybe I'm frustrated, maybe I'm overwhelmed, maybe I'm anxious. Exploring the range of emotions. So yoga. Who here has practiced yoga ever in their life? A few hands, yeah. So I find that with yoga, often the deterrent is that people believe that you have to be flexible, you have to be strong, you have to be able to touch your toes, and that's really not what yoga is. Yoga is really that union of the mind and body, and it's a way to explore sensation. So it allows us to be curious and distinguish different sensations. I'll tell you a story really quick. I had a kiddo one time who had a lot of anxiety, and he was also having accidents on the bus. And what we found is he was very disconnected from his body. And I found this out just by testing him in mountain pose. So I had him stand up, and I had him lean forward. So you can't see right now, but as I lean forward, my toes curl up a little bit. And his response was like, ow, 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 ow. And I was like, woo, back off. What scale is it at? It's at a 10. I'm like, oh my gosh, we gotta go to the emergency room. This is bad. Like 10 is bad. He's like, well, maybe not 10. But his stress response was such that he just couldn't tolerate it. Had no ability to manage that little bit of stress, that little bit of sensation. His distress tolerance was very low. So we started with yoga, just feeling into the body, noticing sensations, distinguishing different sensations. It can allow us to explore that edge of discomfort without it being overwhelming, right? It builds a greater capacity to stay present with a wider range of sensations and emotions, right? It can help you reclaim a greater sense of choice about the state of your nervous system. We can use yoga if we need to downregulate. We can use yoga if we need to energize, right? So it gives us access to how do we want to be right now? How do we want this to impact us? And it's a pathway for creating ease and relaxation in the mind and body. What I know about kids with anxiety is they're often revving really high, right? They're very out of touch with what it even feels like to relax. When you ask them, when do you relax? They're like, when I go to sleep, right? Which wreaks havoc on our body. Yeah. So let's try something out real quick since you've all been such great participants. We're just gonna try a little posture here. So sitting up nice and tall. You've all been sitting for a while, and I know that when we sit for a while, our hips get pretty tight. So I'm gonna invite you to take one leg and cross it over the other leg so that your leg that's crossed, the ankle matches or meets the knee. And I'm gonna ask you to flex that foot. If you have any knee problems, you're really gonna wanna make sure you're being gentle with this and flexing your foot. Sitting up tall is gonna help. What I'm going to invite you to do is just sit here like this and just notice where you feel sensation. So kind of scanning the body, notice where you feel sensation. And I love it. Somebody said bad sensation. So I'm going to ask you to put a word to it instead of bad. What do you notice? Ache. Some uncomfortableness. Stiff. I want you to try to breathe deeply. And imagine you're breathing kind of into that area. Just breathe a couple of deep breaths. And notice if that shifts or changes the sensation at all. May or may not. Now for some of us, we feel a lot of sensation just here, right? It allows us to explore, what does that feel like? Can I get curious about that, right? What would happen if you just tilt from your hips forward a little bit? Does it start to intensify a little bit? Everyone's like, yeah, I feel it. Can you sit with that and relax into that sensation? If it hurts, come out of it. But notice what happens when you start to breathe into it and just allow it to be. See if you can ride that wave a bit. Put a word to how it feels. Just be really curious about it versus react it, override. And then come on back. Let that leg come down. Just notice the difference between one hip and the other. Notice anything different? Yeah. So you don't have to be a yoga teacher. You don't even have to have a yoga mat. But you can just get curious with your body. That's really this pathway to understanding emotions and felt sense in the body is just by getting in our body, starting to feel, stretching in the morning, at night, right? I'm going to teach you this window of tolerance. Has anybody heard of the window of tolerance? Okay. This is Stephen Porges and Dan Siegel and Deb Hanna talk and reference the window of tolerance quite a bit. So the window of tolerance, everyone has, right? Everybody's window of tolerance is different based on a lot of things, based on your genetics, based on your early childhood experiences, based on so many different factors. The window of tolerance is basically our ability to experience stress, experience life, right? Or discomfort without going into overwhelm. We can still consciously make decisions. Our amygdala isn't completely taken over. Outside of our window of tolerance, on the top, is our fight-flight or fight-flee. So this is our sympathetic nervous system. It causes us into mobilization. We already talked about anxiety is a high energy. There's a reason, right, that we mobilize. It helps us get safe. It either fights off whatever's the harm or it gets us out of there pretty quickly. It can look like high energy, anxiety, restlessness, rigid behavior, anger, hypervigilance, overwhelm, and fear. Has anybody ever been outside of their window of tolerance up in fight-flight? Yeah. That 10 or 11-year-old's version of myself? Yeah, that's where I was. That's where I spent a lot of time. So what that means is I am outside of this area where my nervous system is regulated. I'm now in my sympathetic nervous system. I'm in fight-flight, cortisol and adrenaline going through my body. Okay? On the other side of this is freeze. This is our oldest branch of the nervous system. This is the branch of the parasympathetic nervous system. And I already mentioned the parasympathetic nervous system once. That's our rest digest. But the other branch of that is the dorsal vagal branch. This is immobilization. This is when I've utilized fight, flee, and it didn't work. So the only last resort is to freeze. This can look like zoning out, spaciness, not present, lack of motivation, withdraw, shutdown, and disassociation at the most extreme. We as humans move up and down through this cycle. Every day it looks different. And based on our own window of tolerance, based on our own life experiences, our genetics and such, epigenetics, it can look different for everybody. It's important to note, let me go back for a minute. I want to point out that the goal is not to be right in the middle and to be zen and calm all the time. That's impossible, right? That's not the goal. What we're actually working with and doing is trying to build our window of tolerance so that when we experience something that's stressful, we have the tool set, we have the awareness that we know what to do to be able to regulate or settle. I like to use the word settle versus calm. Because some of the kids I work with, if you tell them to be calm, they got some stuff going on in their life, there's no reason they should be calm. So settling is still being able to settle the body, the nervous system enough so that you can make some conscious choices, perhaps with support. So we know that kids' window of tolerance is a lot smaller, right? Still developing. Kids with trauma or adults with trauma have smaller windows of tolerance. It doesn't take as much for them to jump outside of their window of tolerance. Some of the kids that I work with who have anxiety spend most of their day up outside the window of tolerance. Cortisol and adrenaline going through their body most of the day. By the way, that was designed only to be short term, to get you out of danger really quickly. And then we go back to homeostasis. So our bodies were designed, I'll say it again, to have short spurts of that fight flight to get us to safety. And then we reacclimate back into homeostasis, come back into our window of tolerance. We've got people that are spending most of their day up in this space. And we can't maintain that. And so what often happens is we drop down to dorsal. We're exhausted, we're overwhelmed, we're immobilized. Sometimes it looks like depression, right? So when we teach kids this, it gives them some context of like, where am I at? What's going on? How empowering, right? So with kids, I have them track. When they come in for session, plot what your day looked like. And then we start to understand what some of the triggers are. And because they've started to do this work of like body mapping and using words and language to describe sensations, they're pretty skilled at talking about what it looks like when they're outside of their window of tolerance. So this is language from kids. Heart pounding, restless, yelling, screaming, hitting, slamming doors, throwing things, punching, blaming, deflecting, demanding, controlling, running away, unfocused, procrastinating, panicking, and on and on and on. Now, it doesn't mean just if you have that behavior once that you're outside your window of tolerance all the time. But this is often what those behaviors can look like, and we often just look at the behaviors. But what if instead we start to look at kids from the lens of where are they at in their nervous system? It's going to really cue us into maybe what to do instead. When I first started in this work, we focused on behaviors and created behavior plans to try to shape behavior. We didn't know enough about the nervous system to know how to work with nervous systems to regulate them. We often talk to them when their lids were flipped. You know what it's like? Has anybody tried to talk with you and try to convince you when you're like out of control? It's kind of like wah, 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 wah. Nothing, you're not processing language, right? So if we know that kids are here, then our strategies change. We try to get them regulated first. So perhaps then we can get them to a space eventually where they can reason, come up with a different plan, do it over again. Understand the consequences. And this end, this is described as tired, exhausted, withdrawn, shut down, disconnected, urge to hide, zoned out, daydreaming, stuck, numb, foggy. I have some kids that just read and read and read. They disassociate, disconnect just with reading all of the time. They don't have to think or feel if they're just reading all the time. It's not to say if you're an avid reader that that's what's happening, right? Right? But if that's your only default, that's your only way, and you never kind of do anything else to soothe and take care of yourself, then perhaps you're just checking out. How interesting. We can learn from that. It's also really important that we understand and know what it feels like to be in our window of tolerance. So what does that look like? What does it feel like? I'm joyful, I'm playful, I'm fun, I'm energized, curious, interested, I'm connected, I can communicate clearly, I'm breathing more fully, I'm settled, I'm relaxed, I'm peaceful. Fight, flight, and our sympathetic nervous system is not bad. We actually need it. It actually is, it's actually in action and happening when we're playful and joyful and fun. We've got a little bit of sympathetic going on too. On the other end, parasympathetic down to dorsal is needed for us to be able to actually chill out and relax too. So the nervous system, like the brain, just doesn't work in compartments like one or the other. It's constantly flowing. Again, the goal is to be able to be aware of it first and then to build our tolerance so that our window can widen. So what do I need? This is where we used to start with like strategies, like, okay, here we got this behavior. What do we do? We bypassed all the what's going on the inside. So now we've inserted what's happening, being mindful of what's happening in the inside, giving it some attention, working with it a little bit. Now I know maybe what I need from a nervous system lens. It looks a little bit different. Breathing exercises. I like to walk and talk. There's bilateral stimulation going on when you're walking and talking through something. Shaking. Go for a run, jump on a trampoline, dance, rock in a rocking chair, kick a ball, yoga, sigh, yell, hum, tap, laugh, cry, weighted blanket, a big hug. Those are all body-based strategies. Does it make sense that if we're working and looking at it through a nervous system lens, how we might integrate some of these strategies? As adults, what we usually do is talk, which requires this part of the brain, which kids don't have access to usually when they're feeling pretty anxious. So we start here. We get them regulated first. We work with the body. Movement is one of the best ways to regulate. Movement, breathing. Breathing, practicing in calm states a lot first. Down here, maybe I need to actually rest. Maybe I'm tapped out, so I need a nap. Yoga, I want to connect with people. Rapid breathing, stepping outside, taking a shower, going for a walk, running, upbeat music, watching funny videos. In order to get from a dorsal vagal kind of shutdown nervous system, we actually have to go through the sympathetic nervous system. We have to energize to get up to that window of tolerance. It's not laid out this way. I didn't want to go too deep in it. But if we were working with a kiddo who's shut down, it's hard to go from shut down to, oh, now I'm engaged in learning. Does that make sense? Sometimes we need to get them up and moving. Let's go for a walk and talk first. Usually if I have a kid that comes in and is like this, I don't just start talking. I usually say, hey, listen, let's walk down to the coffee shop, or let's go just for a walk around the block. And usually within minutes, they're starting to regulate a little bit more and they can engage a little bit more, talk about what's going on. Make sense? There's no bad or wrong nervous system state. Each state of being carries wisdom and information for you, and each state of your nervous system provides access to a set of emotions and sensations. Feeling our difficult emotions increases access to joy and happiness. I'll say that again. Our ability to feel even the difficult, I don't call them bad, but difficult emotions increases access to joy and happiness when we can feel the range of it. We explore and embrace all of the keys, tones, rhythms of who you truly are. If you're human, you experience all of it. Unfortunately, we just kind of push the yucky, hard stuff to the side and wish that we could feel happy all the time. Does that kind of sound like the culture we live in? It doesn't fit for us as human beings, though, right? It's not realistic. So, coming up to an end here, attuning to a child's emotions. When we're able to attune, that's seeing really underneath the behavior what that child's going through or needs, we're communicating, I'm here for you, you're safe to explore what you feel. Now, I will say that that requires you to be in a state where you feel settled enough to be able to be present for that. That's a lot of work. All emotions are worthy of your attention. There's not good or bad emotions. Let's explore them all. Let's talk about them all, not only when you're happy. You can feel emotions and still be okay. Tell you a quick story. I was doing some of this work with a parent, and we had talked about just this practice was just to validate how the kiddo was feeling. And they came in the next week, and she said, Jen, I got to talk to you about that validating thing that you had me do. It didn't work. I'm like, okay, tell me more. And she said, I validated how she was feeling, and she started to cry. I said, tell me more. She was crying. I said, how long did it last? She's like, I don't know, like 4 or 5 minutes. And her daughter's sitting there. She's like 12. And she's just looking at her mom. And I said, okay. And how was that for you? And she's like, that felt really horrible. Like I felt like I did something wrong. And I said to the daughter, I said, how did that feel for you? And she goes, I just needed to release it. And I just wanted my mom to say it was okay. Mom was so dysregulated, she just couldn't be present for it, right? So we were able to look at it and say, maybe instead of her, it was wrong or bad or whatever, it felt yucky that she was crying, she actually felt safe enough because you validated how she felt. She felt safe enough to be able to cry and release it. Crying is a very natural thing. In fact, we should be crying. It feels really good after you cry, right? The goal is not to be happy all the time. We kind of live in that world that we should feel zen and good all the time. Go ahead and feel. So this is the messaging. Go ahead and feel, explore, and validate. the present moment experience, whatever it is, and then release the energy or explore what you need versus avoid, bypass, or fix the feelings. Often we jump to fix the feelings or this is too much. Now, if you're a parent, right, and you're looking at that and you're like, ooh, I've screwed up a little bit, right? I know, because I was there, right? This is a lot of work, and this is not about being perfect. It's about recognizing this is really hard work, and probably I wasn't taught this stuff. So it's like a relearning. It's a relearning how to be with yourself. This is a quote by Resmaa Menakem I really appreciate. Few skills are more essential than the ability to settle your body. If you can settle your body, you are more likely to be alert and fully present no matter what is going on around you. A settled body enables you to harmonize and connect with other bodies around you while encouraging those bodies to settle as well and creating possible somatic alignment. Now, his work, Resmaa Menakem's work, is an embodied anti-racism work. So he looks at that through the lens of we have to be working on our own nervous systems in order to do anything when you're talking about race, because there's a lot of charge around race. And my body, as a white-bodied person, and my epigenetics, my history, has a big impact on me, as does a brown or black or person of culture's body. And we have to look at that. So even this work, if you're interested at all, Resmaa Menakem, I highly recommend his work as a therapist and an author. So in conclusion here, I have a present day picture. And I want to kind of loop back to this work that I started about 15 years ago. I still have anxiety quite a bit. I had a really restless night of sleep. My neuroception was like, something's bad's gonna happen. I cognitively did all the work. I'm good, I'm fine, I can handle this, you've done this before, right? But the difference was I didn't beat myself up. I didn't say something was wrong with me. I knew what was going on. I knew that I was up in a little bit near my, outside of my window of tolerance or nearing it. So I did a lot of things last night. This morning, I did a lot of things to help regulate my nervous system so I could show up, right? So I still experienced it, but my window of tolerance is built. It's a little bit bigger, right? And I can still just allow it to be there versus being scared of it or afraid of it, avoiding it, dismissing it. And I want to just point out that the real work for me personally in the work that I do with kids is it starts with my kids, right? So these are my kids here. And I'll say that now that I'm still doing this work, and it's a constant work, is that I can show up differently. And one of the key regulation strategies that we always dismiss is this ability to co-regulate. So I just want to point out this really quickly before we wrap this up. So the autonomic nervous system is shaped and regulated through interactions with others. Think about a baby, right? I mean, it's being shaped by whatever nervous system is with it, right? So we all come into this world with a nervous system ready to be shaped. Okay? So everybody's nervous system's a little bit different based on who your caretaker was. We know that it can be shaped and changed. So if we had a caretaker who is dysregulated most of the time, we can start to do that work to start to change our nervous system, to build our window of tolerance. So important to know. There's a human need for co-regulation, and it happens throughout the lifespan. So we are intended to be in relationship with people. You, and I really appreciate your eye contact and engagement. For me, that told me I'm safe, I'm okay. Have you ever been to, I don't know if you've ever been to a lecture and everybody's heads are down? Doesn't give that like shuts me down. That feels unsafe for me. So I really appreciate you today and your engagement. Co-regulation is a powerful intervention that is often overlooked. Last one here, with awareness and lots of practice and conditioning, we can communicate a willingness to be with a child's distress and offer that regulating strategy to the children we support versus just staying calm and bypassing it. So when I work one-on-one with kids, I'm constantly doing strategies just to stay regulated, especially when they're dysregulated. It's a practice. I was not taught that in school. I love this last quote, and this will end it. Sweetheart, you are in pain. Relax. Take a breath. Let's pay attention to what's happening. Then we'll figure out what to do. And upon reading this, it sounds like somebody talking to a child, and actually Sylvia Boorstein, in this talk she did, that's her talking to herself. So this work really requires a lot of self-compassion for ourselves. Let's pause, figure out what's going on here, then we'll figure out the other stuff. These are some of the earlier teachers who influenced me. I just wanted to make reference to them as well. And then I just want to thank you for your time and attention. And we have some time for questions, if anyone has questions at all. Yeah. Thank you.
Are any of those books or other books that you have
Mhm.
find good for re-regulating?
Say that again.
So like for dysregulated children and adults, are there like self-help
For re-regulation. For the child, for the adult?
either?
For either. So these books are more of the science and the why, right? From all various different lenses. So again, I talked before about references like books. I would say read books to educate yourself, but also get on a yoga mat. Or don't get on a yoga mat and stretch and move your body. It really requires a practice of embodiment. It's not conceptual.
Sure.
You can't think your way into regulation. I mean, thoughts have a big impact, right? I do cognitive behavioral therapy, but wow, I mean, you should have seen me last night, right? I was thinking all the good, encouraging thoughts, challenging all of them, right? And I was doing all the work. My nervous system still is just set up differently, so I'm going to feel overwhelmed. Yeah. Did that answer your question?
No, but it's okay. It's
Yeah.
okay.
Are you looking for specific books?
If you knew of any that were like a teen could read, like you might be dysregulated. These are some strategies you could have like at your fingertips without talking to other people.
Yeah. So
Or the adult, like if I had a friend who I'm like, I think that she might be dysregulated. Is there a book on like how to re-regulate yourself?
yeah.
Which could be like a book saying you should do yoga, but still like having
Yeah,
that
yeah, and I would say a
resource.
lot of these books, the Body Keeps Score is one that a lot of people will start with to
Yes.
understand what's going on. The how-tos and regulation. There's the therapeutic yoga is all about that.
Okay.
And I have other resources. I won't, with my memory, I'm not going to be able to pull them right out, but if you email me, and I've got my information here next, that you can email me and I can talk about specifics. I have a lot of books regarding kids and adolescents in that too.
Excuse me, Jen, can you repeat the question?
Oh yes, thank you. So the question was, do you have any books that you would recommend that you could actually hand to somebody, you know, if you know that they are dysregulated a lot, right? If you could hand to them just to kind of give them more education of what to do and how to do it. So more about the how-tos.
Yeah.
Yeah, question.
So on the window of tolerance, which I really love, but so in prior reading Daniel Goleman's book on emotional intelligence, his whole thing is teaching delayed gratification earlier in life, and I'm just trying to like put these two concepts together of the why, like we're trying to have a bigger window of tolerance, but then is that we're able to like stay in the window longer for our delayed gratification. I'm just trying to put these concepts together a little bit because they seem to be
Yeah.
the same.
Well, when I think about like delayed gratifications, when I think about it when I work with kids, is oftentimes it's the like when kids have to wait for something, right? That the discomfort comes often with what's going on in their body, right? So like that having to wait, that impulse control, that distress tolerance that they don't have. And so learning how to be with that feeling and to work with that emotion, with that feeling a bit is going to build their tolerance a bit more, right? So that I think in theory, that would increase that. Does that make sense? Yeah, yeah. So I often, when I'm working with kids, I look at like what's going on in their nervous system. What does that mean? I know intellectually that they want something, but what's going on that's dysregulating them, that's causing them to scream, throw a fit, that's throwing them into fight, flight, right? And it's often with the body, that their just ability to maintain, they're very unaware of what's going on the inside. And it's not an easy fix. These are a lot of kind of gradual steps up that we're working towards. Yeah. Versus like a behavior modification. I'm not down, putting that down. That works too, but or parents sometimes like consequences, but consequences don't teach skills either, and so we have to teach that alongside other skills too. Yeah, go ahead.
So you said the freezing up is what happens when fight flight doesn't work. So usually that'll come with a higher level of stress than just fight flight, it sounds like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's our oldest part of our nervous system. If you look at mammals out in the wild, they will run or try to flee, and then they'll play dead, right? And that's if they can't get out of the danger, that's their last resort, right? And the hope is that if I do that, then the predator will just leave me be and walk away, and then I can come out of that. So yeah, the thing is, when I work with kids who go into freeze mode, it's often that's been their safety mechanism for staying safe. So what I mean by that is perhaps fighting or fleeing wouldn't work as a child in an abusive situation, so they disconnect, they disassociate, and that keeps them safe.
So it's not a matter of it being a more stressful situation.
Perhaps, yeah. Yep, perhaps too. And freeze is a whole nother level, or just different even hormones that are released through the body, so that we're not feeling pain, our blood pressure lowers, our heart rate lowers. Yeah. And everybody's window's different, right? And so for some, I've worked with some kiddos who stay at fight flight all the time, don't really go down to freeze at all. It just might be how that person is interpreting it, or how they're interpreting the stress and what's working for them too. Yeah. A couple other questions.
Yeah, I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit more about the type of kids that you work with. I think in the beginning you said that you work with kids who have a lot of trauma, but it sounds like kids with ADHD or on the autism spectrum, or kids with oppositional defiant disorder could totally benefit from this. So what sort of kids do you typically work with, and do you think that this sort of therapy is comparable to medications in some ways?
Yeah. So the question was, what kind of kids do you work with? She feels like I talked a lot about working with kids with anxiety and anxiety and trauma. And then the other part of that question was, how does this compare to even medication? So to answer that first question, my first 15 years was working with a lot of kiddos on the autism spectrum, oppositional defiant labels in the school setting. So yeah, absolutely. I would say in the last 6 years or so is in private practice, I'm primarily working with kiddos with anxiety and trauma. So I'm also an EMDR therapist, so I do a lot of that work as well, and incorporating that. In terms of medication, I don't really speak to medication because there's so many different ways to look at it, and I think it's such an individual choice, and that's not my expertise. I've worked with kids who have anxiety where medication has been very beneficial, and I've worked with some who it's been not beneficial. So, yeah.
I think my question was more do you think that these sorts of therapies are capable of treating some kids better even than medications have been? Do you ever have children who are able to come off medications because they're learning therapies or strategies from you?
So just to reiterate, that the question was, do you think this type of therapy could benefit kids, a whole spectrum of different kids, and perhaps even allow them to come off of medication? And I would say, in the work that I do, yes, I've seen kids come off of medication through therapy and work. It's hard to say it's because of this, right? But I will say that we have to, as human beings, understand what's happening within ourselves, right? In order to be able to care for and nurture and take care of ourselves in that way, and have a little bit more agency, I think, in how we're managing some of life's stressors. I think this type of work can benefit all kids. I've worked with a lot of kids on the autism spectrum as well, right? And so, yes, the answer is I think it can benefit all kids. Not necessarily gonna answer the medication question, but lots of different thoughts about that. Yeah.
Your first slide, or one of the first slides, where you had a space that you enjoyed going to, like the Keweenaw or whatever.
Yeah.
Would you ever bring a child or someone to a place and use like environmental rather than imagining it or picturing it for yourself? Would you go to that and use an outside
Yeah.
area or stimulant? Sorry.
Great question.
That would be a benefit or anything?
Yeah, so in my therapy and private practice, we live in my office is in Easttown, and so we will utilize walking around there and a couple of parks too. And for some kids, they really gravitate towards that, and so absolutely, if that kind of matches where that kid is, definitely would utilize that. Yeah, yeah. We know that nature. There's a lot of research around nature and wellness or mental health and just being outside. A lot of our kids are really deprived of that. Yeah.
Yes, when working with kids, do you also give advice to the parents to allow them, like when they're not in therapy, do you allow the parents to just like know what they can do better just to make
Yeah.
sure their child is
Yeah, great question. So the question was, I work one-on-one with kids, but do you bring the parent in? Is the parent any part of that therapy experience too? And the answer is yes. It's very individualized. So it's really based on each kiddo, but especially some of the younger kids. I start working with kids around 7 or 8. Those younger kids, I bring the parent in for a lot of the sessions. So they're hearing the same thing. Because the old idea, I think, was like, drop my kid off, fix them, and then everything's better, right? And really, through my talk, a lot of this conversation is around the adults need to be part of that and understanding the impact of their nervous system on the kiddos as well. And so that's a big shift, because sometimes there is this belief still that just fixing the problem will make everything better. So yeah, I love to bring parents in as much as I can. There was another question over here. Yeah.
How would you say, so I see a lot of overlap between anxiety and stress. How would you say is like a good tool to be able to separate that?
Yeah. So the question was, what's a good tool to kind of separate anxiety from stress? So I think, stress gets a bad rap, right? But stress is actually something that's not all bad. Stress motivates us. Stress is something that can keep us kind of going and reaching our goals, right? I would say it can reach into anxiety when it starts to be a little bit more debilitating, right? When it's impacting you to the point where it's impacting your sleep, impacting your kind of daily functioning, impacting your ability to do things that you were able to do before, perhaps. When you're feeling sick, overwhelmed by it. Yeah. Yeah, everybody experiences stress. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, everybody.
So, okay, there we go. Thank you again, Jen Rapanos, for joining us today, and thank you all for your attention, especially those of you who stayed right till the end. Always appreciate that. And there's a contact information. I just wanted to briefly remind you of talks next semester. If you're still here at JRCC, we do have our next speaker will be coming up, and oh my goodness, I'm blanking on the date. So I will send out information. Her name is Jillian Hardy. She's coming from the University of Michigan to talk to us about the brain and substance use and abuse. So thank you for your time and attention. Have a great day.